Ես ողջունում եմ մեր բոլոր ռադիոլսողներին եւ ռադիոդիտողներին։ Դուք դիտում եւ լսում եք Գործարար Ալիքը, տաղավարում աշխատում Էլիան Նախաչատրյանն։ Այսօր զրուցում ենք գիտական հետազոտությունների զարգացման կենտրոնի հիմնադիր Վահագն Պողոսյանի հետ, բարև պարոն Պողոսյան։ Մենք օրեր առաջ մեր տաղավարում դուք Արիզոնայի համալսարանի պրոֆեսոր Փոլ Դևիսի հետ ունեցաք բավական հետաքրքիր հարցազրույցը արդեն ձայնագրվել է եւ քիչ անց մեր բոլոր ռադիոլսողներին եւ ռադիոդիտողներին այն կներկայացնենք։ Շատ տարբեր թեմաներից զրուցեցիք, քվանտային ֆիզիկայից մինչև քաղցկեղ։ Նախ առաջին հարցս, ինչ գործ ուներ Արիզոնայի համալսարանի պրոֆեսորը Հայաստանում, ինչու էր եկել եւ ինչն է նրան մտցրել այսքան մեծ թեմաների ներկապնակի մեջ, որ այսպես շատ տարբեր հարցերի շուրջ խոսեցիք։ Խնդրեմ։
Շնորհակալություն։ Իր մասնագիտությունը հենց դա է, առհասարակ, ու Հայաստանը եկել էր իր նման մասնագետների հետ շփվելու, որոնք միջ մասնագիտական խաչմերուկներում աշխատող մասնագետներ են, կան մի քանի մասնագիտություններ, որոնք հատվում են գործնականորեն բոլորի հետ, հա, ասենք նույն անգլերենի թարգմանություն մասնագետը, ինքը եթե պիտի ամեն տեղ կարողանա, ասենք օրինակ թարգմանություն անել, որ շուտով վերանալու է, որտեղ արհեստական բանականություն դա անում է, բայց կլինի դա իրական մարդ թե արհեստական բանականություն, պիտի ինքը եթե օրինակ քիմիայի մասնագետների համար է աշխատում գիտաժողովում, ինքը նաև պիտի մարզված լինի քիմիայի մեջ, չի կարող ինքը զուգահեռ թարգմանություն անել առանց քիմիայի իմանալու կամ եթե բաների դիվանագետների հետ ագնում աշխատելու իրանց լավ պիտի իմանա դիվանագիտական ամբողջ բառապաշարը եւ որտեղ որ նա պատշաճ օգտագործել այսինքն կան այդպիսի մասնագիտություններ որոնք անհրաժեշտաբար կիսամասնագիտություն են երկրորդն են պահանջում որտեղ որ կիրառում են իրանց գիտելիքը կիբեռնետիկան եւ համակարգերի տեսությունը եւ բարդ համակարգերի տեսությունը այսինքն վիճակագրական ֆիզիկան բնագիտությունը Դրանք այդպիսի մասնագիտություններ են, հատկապես նաև առանձնանում են անգլերենի թարգմանություն, ասենք սովորաբար այդ մասնագիտությունները արքունի մասնագիտություններ են, այսինքն իրանց պետք են արքունիքում։ Իսկ թագավոր որտեղ է գնում, հետո թարգմանիչ է տանում։ Եվ թագավորը երբ որ ուզում է ինչ-որ հարց լուծի, համակարգաբան է իրան պետք, որպեսզի հասկանա այս որոշումը մյուսների վրա ոնց կազդի։ Մարդը որ մոդելավորում է հասարակությունը, փորձում, ասենք եթե այս մի պարամետրը փոխենք այս բարդ համակարգի մյուսների վրա ոնց կազդի։ Դրանք արքունի գիտություններ են, իրանք զարգանում են մի ամբողջ ինստիտուտ, որ աշխատում է բաժիններով։ Մեկը պետք է լինի, որ այս պատվիրատուից եկած պետական գործը բաշխում է ըստ ֆակուլտետների։ Ֆակուլտետներում բիոլոգները Մենակ բիոլոգիա են սիրում ու հարգում են մենակ բիոլոգներին, նույնիսկ մենակ ֆիզիկագետներին հարգում են մենակ ֆիզիկոսներին, բայց մեկը պետք է լինի, որ կարողանում է պատվիրատուից եկած գործը տրոհի իրանց մեջ, սրան ասի դու ես արա, սրան ասի դու ես արա։ Այդ մարդիկ կարող է ամբողջ ինստիտուտը աշխատի ընդամենը 3 հատ տես մարդու համար են, մնացածը նեղ մասնագետներ են, չհարգել առհասարակ ուրիշ մասնագիտություններ եւ նաեւ են մարդկանց, ովքեր Բայց սովորաբար հետները հարգանքով են խոսում, որտեղ պատվեր բերողը իրանք են։ Դրանք համակարգաբաններն են, բարդ համակարգերի տեսության մասնագետներն են, ովքեր բազմապարամետր համակարգերի, տյունինգի եւ չգիտեմ, իրանց մեջ առաջացող երևույթներով կոպիտ ասած չերևացող բաների մասնագետները։ Օրինակ նյարդային ցանց, որ ուսումնասիրում ես, ամեն բջիջ հասարակ բան է, կարող ես մանրադիտակով տեսնել։ Բայց այդ բջիջների համադրությունի մեջ ոնց է առաջանում հումորի զգացումը, ոչ մի մանրադիտակով չես կարող տեսնել, դա լրիվ ուրիշ մասնագիտություն է։ Եվ այդ նույն մասնագիտությունը կարա նաև կիրառվի, օրինակ, ոնց է բջիջների մեջ քաղցկեղը առաջանում։ Հարցին ինչպես են առաջանում աստղերը հարցին, իսկ դու առանձին ատոմները կարող ես ուսումնասիրել, բայց սև խոռոչում ինչա կատարում եւ այլն։ Կամ
միշտ չի որ խնդիրը այդ ատոմների համագումարն է, հա։
Այո, նույն ջերմաշճանը սենյակում ատոմները անունը իր արագությունը ունի, բայց կա ընդհանուր ավելի համակարգային հասկացություն ջերմաշճան, որ ոչ մի ատոմի հատկություն չի, սենյակի ծավալներից էլ է կախված, ճնշումից էլ է կախված եւ այլն, եւ տեղ արդեն ուրիշ հասկացություններ են ի հայտ գալի, որոնք մի ատոմի հետ որևէ կապ չունեն։ Դրանք վիճակագրական հասկացություններ են։ Ասենք ժողովրդի դժգոհության մակարդակը կամ չգիտեմ, ինչ, ասինքն իրանց ունակությունը ինքնապաշտպանվելու, երկրի, ասենք, ունակությունը դիմակայելու հարձակմանը եւ ինչքան շուտ կնահանջի, ինչքան երկար կդիմանա զրկանքներին։ Դրանք բոլորը արդեն ոչ թե մի մարդու հատկություն են, այլ համակարգի հասկություն են։ Եվ այդ համակարգաբանությունը գաղութ պետություններում չգնահատված մասնագիտություն է։ Բայց քանի որ մենք խորհրդային միության ժամանակվանից դեռ ունենք հələ չքանդված, լրիվ չքանդված այդ դպրոցը այստեղ կան այդ մասնագետները եւ Փոլ Դևիսը այստեղ էր, որ իրանց հետ աշխատի, որտեղ իրանց դեռ իրանց գիտելիքը մրցունակ է աշխարհում, դեռ իրանց հոդվածները կարդում են մարդիկ։ Հետաքրքիր բաներ ենք հայտնաբերում այս մեջ Երևանի ֆիզիկայի ինստիտուտի գիտնականները մասնապես Դավիթ Սահակյան, ում մոտ որ ինքը եկել էր համագործակցության։ Եվ իրենք աշխատելու են վիճակագրական բնագիտության, կիրառությունների վրա, քաղցկեղի ուսումնասիրության հարցերում։
Շատ լավ, զրույցը անգլերեն լեզվով է, բայց այդուհանդերձ մի քանի բառով ուզում եմ նախքան զրույցը հրապարակելը նշեք մեր ռադիոլսողների համար, թե մոտապես ինչ թեմաների շուրջ եք խոսել, որպեսզի պատկերացում կազմեն, թե ինչ են լսելու։
Դա է, այսինքն ինքը նաև հետաքրքիր մի նախագծում է ներգրավված, էտիա կոչվում, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, այսինքն արտա երկրագնդային գիտակցության որոնում, այսինքն կան այլ մոլորակայիններ, թե չէ, իրանք մեզ ազդանշան ուղարկում են, թե չէ, կամ եղել են մինչև այդ մոլորակի վրա, թե չէ, միգուցե եղել են ինչ-որ հետքեր են թողել։
Հենց ինտելեկտի թե կյանքի մասին է խոսքը, թե դրանք տարբեր բաներ են։
Բանականության որոնում։
Հա, բանականության, այսինքն դրանք ես գիտեմ, որ կան մասնագետներ, որոնք պարզապես կյանքի նշաններ են որոնում, դա լրիվ ուրիշ բան է։ Կյանքի նշանը դա դեռ բանականության մասին չի խոսքը։
Օրգանական նյութ թե չէ, դա մի հարց։
Հա, դա մի հարց է,
բայց դենթեի մեջի օրինակ կոդերից որևէ մեկը կարող է այնուամենայնիվ բնական ճանապարհով չի առաջացել, օրինակ, չգիտեմ, ծառի մեջ, այլ առաջացել է ներխուժման շնորհիվ, դա պահանջում է վիճակագրական բնագիտություն, համակարգաբանություն, բարդ համակարգերի տեսություն, մասնագիտությունը։ Շատ
լավ, եթե ավելացնելու ոչինչ չունեք, այս դեպքում առաջարկենք թերևս ռադիոլսողներին։
Կարող եմ միայն ուղղակի մի րոպեով ասել, որ մենք նախ շնորհակալ ենք լրատվական ռադիոյին, որ այս հնարավորությունը ընձեռնում է այս ձևի հաղորդումներ եւս, այսինքն բիզնես գործարար ալիքին, որը չնայած որ իր գործարար ուղղվածությանը եւ ոչ թե ռազմավարական հարցերի այնուամենայնիվ հնարավորություն անձայում այս խորը գիտական թեմաներով հյուրեր հրավիրել եւ իրանց հետ աշխատել են, ինչ որ զբաղված է ԿԶԿ հիմնադրամը, այսինքն մինչ մասնագիտական եւ նաեւ ենթակառուցվածքային պետական նշանակության հարցերի շուրջ, որը կարող է բիզնեսմեններին շատ չհետաքրքրում, բայց
դե նայած բիզնեսմեն, այսպես ասենք։
Այո, մենք հուսով ենք, որ մեր համագործակցությունը շարունակական կլինի եւ կկարողանանք այսպիսի հարցազրույցներ հետաքրքիր մարդկանց հետ էլ կազմել։
Մենք էլ ենք շատ հուսով, շատ շնորհակալ ենք մեր ռադիոլսողներին եւ ռադիոդիտողներին հիշեցնեմ, որ մեր հյուրն էր այս պահին տաղավարում գիտական հետազոտությունների զարգացման կենտրոնի հիմնադիր Վահագն Պողոսյանը, օրեր առաջ մեր ստուդիայում Վահագն Պողոսյանը զրուցել է Արիզոնայի համալսարանի պրոֆեսոր Փոլ Դևիսի հետ եւ հենց այս զրույցը առաջարկում ենք ձեզ դիտել կամ լսել։ Շնորհակալություն։
Շնորհակալություն։
I'm Paul Davies. I'm a Regents Professor at Arizona State University in Phoenix, and I'm also Director of the Beyond Center for Fundamental Concepts in Science there.
We have also seen in publicity in Wikipedia and other articles that you have been running a program in SETI. Could you please say a few words about that department and that program?
Well, I haven't been running SETI, but I've been interested in SETI all my career. I'm a well-wisher. I know the people at the SETI Institute in California very well over many years. I'm a consultant to a project known as Breakthrough Listen, which is funded by Yuri Milner as part of the Breakthrough Science Research Programs. And it's dedicated to expanding the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. So I'm on that committee. And for about 10 years, I chaired another committee. It's called I called a task group for the International Academy of Astronautics, and it's the post-detection task group. So in other words, if we should suddenly get evidence that we are not alone, a message from ET or find some artifact or something, what next? What do we do? How do we release that news? How should we respond? What should we do about that great discovery? And so that was an interesting exercise for about 10 years. I'm no longer doing that.
I see. And so when this organization and in general this field of operations and scientists, they're planning for it and doing the search, what kind of models for intelligence are they using, and who is what is the organizational structure of that field of science?
Well, SETI began as a lone activity in 1960 with a particular astronomer, Frank Drake, who got some very modest amount of funding to operate a radio telescope in West Virginia, just pointed at a few nearby stars to see if there might be a radio message coming from aliens, from an alien civilization. In those days, it was possible only to listen to a few particular frequencies. Over the years, the technology got so good, it's now possible to monitor like 1 billion radio channels simultaneously. And the program became scaled up over the decades, but it was always stuck for money. The funding has always been very small. The number of people doing this, the number of professional astronomers, it's really just a handful. It's not like a huge team. It has been transformed since Yuri Milner gave $100 million to increase it. But even so, it is still operating in the same way, which is pointing radio telescopes, the bigger the better, at candidate stars, and they can now do many stars, listen for maybe half an hour and see if anything's coming, and then move on to the next, and so on. So over the years, they've covered thousands and thousands of stars and really haven't obtained anything that is truly puzzling. One or two false alarms and a few intriguing results, but nothing that you would publish to say this is evidence of a message from an extraterrestrial civilization. I happen to think that this is a very limited way of answering the question, are we alone in the universe? Because we don't have to get a message from ET saying, you are not alone. All we have to do is to discover somewhere, anywhere in the universe, signs of technology of a non-human origin. It doesn't have to be a message. It could be
a building.
Let's bracket the two. On a large scale, imagine out there in the universe some star system 500 light years away. There's some mega structure that the alien civilization has built around their star, some astro-engineering, something on a colossal scale, something that humanity might be able to do in another 1 million years. And we may notice that. That's on the large scale. On the small scale, it could be that there is some sort of, indeed, some sort of message or record here on Earth that there's been alien technology in the solar system, maybe 100 million years ago. What might survive for 100 million years? Well, for example, there could be changes in the genomes of terrestrial organisms. We can now edit microbes, microbial organisms, to insert information. You can put a whole book into E. coli. And it's not inconceivable that sitting somewhere in terrestrial organisms is that message not coming in by radio, but embedded in the genomes of terrestrial organisms. That's obviously hugely speculative, but it's very easy to test because you could just look through the gene sequences of organisms and look for something peculiar. So that these are what we call techno-signatures. So that's a general term, meaning it's a signature or a sign of some sort of intelligent manipulation, and it can be anywhere from the microscale that I've just talked about right up to some sort of cosmic scale. And anything would do. So we just need to keep an open mind and look right across all of the databases that we have access to. It doesn't cost much money. Let's look. Who knows what we will find.
I see. And that group that you said, the second project you participated in SETI, when basically post-incident, does it model also ethical behavior? Like, have you been discussing, like, will they have the same ethics and same understanding of good and bad and interaction? Is there any philosophical aspects or ethical aspects of that modeling of that incident?
I have to say it's almost all philosophical, because we have no idea if we were to receive some sort of message or just get evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence, no idea what form that would take or how it would come. And so it's not worth wasting too much time worrying about the technical details, but there's a lot of thought given to, for example, at what point should the news be released to the public? So supposing we go back to the old idea that radio telescope picks up a message, like in the movie Contact, for example, starring Jodie Foster.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So suddenly we've got a message, but we're going to tell everybody, would there be panic or more to the point, I don't think there would be panic, but more to the point, does it mean that everybody who has an interest in this will try to commandeer a radio telescope and send some sort of reply on behalf of mankind, but it's actually on behalf of that individual or that group. So that becomes difficult. There's a protocol about who gets told first. I don't think anybody believes in practice that will work. I think these days, with social media, if there was anything serious like that, the news would get out pretty rapidly. It will be leaked. All it takes is for one of the astronomers down at the pub to have one drink too many, and it's out there. And so a lot of thought given to how to control any sort of response. But I think we all agreed, and this has been true right from the outset, that this is a discovery that belongs to all humanity. And it's not just one astronomer who gets a Nobel Prize and takes control of it, that it's so life-changing, so momentous for everybody, that if there is to be any sort of reply or maybe no reply, that's a decision that needs to be made at the highest level, but with the broadest input from different countries, different interest groups, different populations. However, we're really into unknown territory because it's hard enough to control technology like cloning, for example. You can have an international protocol that says we should do this or we shouldn't do that, but we know people break the rules. There's always a country somewhere that doesn't care about the international consensus. It's very, very hard to predict how it would probably spin out of control pretty rapidly, in my view.
Changing the topic from very big, from your lecture yesterday at Yerevan State University Physics Department, to very small. You have achievements, you're most famous for achievements in quantum physics. Could you please elaborate for our audience a little bit on what you have been presenting in Armenia to the scientific community yesterday on that side?
Quantum mechanics, as we call it, is about 100 years old. We're coming up to the centenary, and it's the most successful scientific theory ever. It explains matter all the way from subatomic particles up to stars, and it drives many, many technologies that underpin modern society. And so if we look around this room, pretty much everything we see is a product of quantum mechanics from the 1920s. And if I'm just to give some explicit examples, the laser and the transistor and the superconductor and the electron microscope, these things are all products of what we might call quantum 1.0. But the exciting thing is we're now on the cusp of a new quantum revolution, quantum 2.0, in which quantum mechanics is applied not just to matter, but to information. That is, we're all familiar with the information revolution, computers and all of the technology that goes with that, just like our mobile phones. All of this depends on information. Bits is the unit of information. And now quantum mechanics is being applied to information itself. And so this is called quantum information science. And it leads to some technology which looks just like magic. For example, quantum teleportation. It's possible to send a bit, sort of a bit, it's called a qubit, of information from one place to another without passing through the space in between. Then there's quantum computing. The basic idea of a conventional computer is that you have switches, something's either on or off. It encodes binary operations, 0 and 1. Very simple notion. Think of flipping a coin. It comes down heads or it comes down tails. You don't know which, but when you look, you get one bit of information. So it's very simple to understand. In a quantum computer, a coin, a metaphorical coin, can be in a superposition of heads and tails. It can be in heads and tails in a blended reality. So quantum physics says that there isn't a single reality. There's a vast spectrum of blended realities, of possible worlds amalgamated together. When you make an observation, you collapse them down to one particular world. That's the essence of quantum mechanics. Now, that means there are vastly more combinations of things. So now if you flip, say, 3 coins, you don't have 3 bits of information as you do with real coins. If there are quantum coins in a superposition of states, you can combine them in exponentially greater numbers. So now if you can put together an atomic system or a subatomic system with only, in theory, only about 200 particles, 200 or 300 particles, you would have more computational resources than the entire universe treated as a classical computer. So this is, when we use the term exponential, it's meant in a very scientific sense here. I really mean exponential. And so the power of a quantum computer would be staggering. And furthermore, you can, using appropriate software in a quantum computer, perform something that has alarmed governments all around the world. You can crack a lot of the codes which are used for financial transactions and spying and any confidential information transfer. The coding system that's been in use for decades would be cracked very easily by a quantum computer. So there's a race among nations to get there first, because all of the communications on the other side are going to be vulnerable. We're not quite there yet, but we are very close to achieving quantum computation. Some companies say that they've done it already on a small scale. But in my view, the most exciting quantum information technology which is emerging are sensors, because quantum mechanics is dealing with phenomena which are so small, so delicate, so subatomic effects. It's possible to measure the very smallest disturbances using quantum systems. And by disturbances, I mean that, I'll give you one example. A quantum gravity radiometer. That sounds a frightening term. What this means is that you can measure the force of gravity. We're sitting here now, and we call it 1G that we experience, and you can measure that quite accurately with mechanical springs and things. But with quantum mechanics, that measurement can be so accurate that you can measure the weakening of the Earth's gravity by moving the device just a single vertical millimeter, because you're slightly further from the center of the Earth. Phenomenal sensitivity. There's another type of quantum sensor which can detect tiny, tiny magnetic fields. You can measure the magnetic field of a single electron. You can put these things in a helmet, put it on your head, and it can read your thoughts. And then you can couple that to AI and extend human consciousness. People are doing this now. So this is quantum magnetic sensing. And it goes on and on and on. So these quantum sensors are, again, revolutionizing technology. it's going to be possible for submarines to navigate, to sail for an entire day and to know within about a meter of where they are without coming to the surface or using GPS or anything like that, just from the quantum accelerometers that can measure every little twist and turn in the submarine. So this is going to be huge, and it's happening now. I think it's creeping up on society because it's being developed so fast. And there's enormous potential for good and bad in quantum sensing technology. So put all this together, quantum mechanics is going to make an enormous impact on our lives in the 21st century, as it has in the 20th century. But here's the killer. This incredible theory, this incredible quantum theory, which I've been talking about, when you sit down with a physicist and say, how does that work? How do blended realities become one reality? We don't know. The theory seems to make no sense at all. It looks like there is a multiplicity, an infinite number of parallel realities that are being described by quantum mechanics. But we know that there's only one real world. What we don't know is how that real world is projected out from this amalgam of different realities by the act of observation. Does it require a conscious being? Is consciousness part of this? Scientists don't like that idea. They don't want consciousness intruding into physics, but maybe we have to. Is it the quantum mechanics breaks down? I think everyone's heard of Schrödinger's cat. So you put a cat into a quantum superposition of live and dead states. You do that by manipulating something at the atomic level, and then something either kills the cat or it doesn't. Are we to believe that cats can be in an amalgam of a live and a dead state? Surely not. So does that mean quantum mechanics breaks down somewhere between the atom and the cat, or is there something else?
But the quantum computers today do bring up quantum effects, subatomic reality or superposition reality into macro space. That's the purpose of quantum computer, right? To bring some... basically, if I throw a coin and don't look at it, then it's in superposition of two states, yes. But does it interact with the rest of the world as a superposition? Like simultaneously, does it have two interactions?
Right. If it's a coin, we would normally say, doesn't matter whether you look at it or not, it is in a definite state, either one or the other. But with the atomic equivalent, might be the spin of an electron, for example, then sure, if you don't actually perform a measurement, it can interact with the rest of the world and with other electrons. We call that entanglement, in a way that preserves that superposition of realities. And that's the power of quantum computing. So long as nothing messes that up, it's very delicate.
I see. But if you add causality, which is part of computation, if you have an algorithm which needs to do step one and then use the results of that step to do step two, you have a causal relation between these two. If you do superposed computation in the step one, then this continuum number of possible answers can branch out into various places, right? The second step of algorithm, and then you can... isn't it like Agarwal's kind of thing that you cannot predict too much into the future if you go into such a superposition? And therefore computations are somewhat limited on the amount of branches that they can do.
It's just the opposite, because it's that exponential branching which gives the power, because in effect, a quantum computer is... some people like to say it's doing all the possible steps in parallel universes and then merging the result at the end. Now, of course, you have to read out the answer at some stage. And at that point, you collapse everything, all these branches down into one. So that has to be done, of course. But it is precisely that you have all of the branches, maybe more branches than there are particles in the universe, all at once, churning information and then amalgamating it to produce the answer. And that means you can calculate things that might take a supercomputer a million years, could be calculated in a minute or something of that sort. Depends how big your quantum computer is. And here we get into the world of commercial exploitation and hype. There are a number of companies who claim that they have quantum computers. what does that mean? There's something called quantum supremacy, which means that your quantum computer should be able to outperform the world's best classical supercomputer in certain well-defined ways. There's also something called quantum advantage, which just means that your probably very expensive quantum computing system can give a boost to what a classical computer might do. So there's the sort of sliding scale of a prowess, let's say, in the definition of these things. But in another 20 years, it may be that these devices are commonplace. We don't know. It's a tough, technically, it's a tough problem.
Without going to physics, let's say, can complex systems emerge? Can some emergent properties of complex systems, complex informational networks, behave like entangled? Do we have to go to subatomic world to harvest the superposition?
Right. Now, I'm a quantum physicist, so I'm quite protective of the term entanglement because it has some very specific features.
I see.
And very weird features because it is basically a telepathic link between widely separated particles, but it can't be used to send information faster than light. But we can have a looser definition of the term entanglement, which simply means the collective properties, maybe organizational properties of a complex system, which might be extended over many, many components. And we're familiar all the time with the fact that that systems can operate in a cooperative manner. Very good example is the laser. It's got trillions and trillions of atoms, each one you think doing their own thing, but no, they become entrained, they become caught up in a cooperative behavior, so they all march in step, so to speak, and that gives you this very pure, coherent light. So there are many examples of systems that spontaneously self-organize into larger, yes, do interesting things on the macro scale. And there's a whole body of theory that attempts to understand that. There's still many mysteries about complex systems, and many mysteries about extending the theory of complex systems from simple physics and chemistry into the world of human affairs. If you want a good example of complex system, take economics. And if we could have the same understanding of economic forces and economic processes as we have of, say, chemical self-organization in mixtures, we'd be doing a better job of running the world. But anything involving human beings has elements of disruption and surprise, and it may be that we can never have a theory of human behavior in that level of detail. Some people dream of doing that. It was the dream of Karl Marx. He thought, well, society is a complex system. There should be a dynamics, like Newtonian dynamics. If we knew what it was, we could steer it to utopia. Didn't really work out, but who knows that one day we might have a way of really understanding how humans behave, and we may be able to create a utopia, but we may also end up creating a dystopia.
Yes, it's really, we are coming closer to topics about why should governments invest in complex systems theory research. And with this, I would like to ask you a question: what are you doing in Armenia? And I know you visited Yerevan Physics Institute and working with Dr. David Saakyan. Could you please elaborate a few words about the topic of your collaboration?
Yes, David and I share a fascination with complex systems, and in particular, what you might call adaptive complex systems. That is, that they're not just complicated things that do what they want, but that they show adaptation to their environment. And so this is really important because it bridges the subjects of physics and biology. And one of my long-standing interests is the origin of life. How did non-life turn into life? How did a mishmash of chemicals become an organized living thing, even if it's a simple living thing, it's still very, very different. So to me, living objects, living organisms seem like magic matter. It does seem as if there's something magical going on. How is that transition to be understood? So David and I are both fascinated by the interplay of the information and the chemistry. So when we're thinking of organisms and information, we're thinking of what we call the genetic code. This is the fact that the instructions for living organisms are written in a 4-letter alphabet in DNA, but they're translated into a sequence of amino acids that make up proteins. And this digital, encoded digital information channel that goes right back to Shannon, how did that come into existence in the first place? What was the origin of that code? So yesterday in my lecture, I talked about, well, the origin of life is really two origins. It's the origin of the chemicals, the molecules, the special molecules. People know about amino acids, they know about proteins, DNA, nucleic acids. So where those have to be produced somehow, so that's part of the story. But the real story, in my view, is the origin of the software, the encoded digital information that is what life runs on, and the emergence of this translation mechanism that turns the language of DNA into the language of proteins. How did that come about in the first place? I don't think we know. I think it's a very, very deep mystery. And many of my colleagues who work on the origin of life think, oh, well, that would just all sort of come out in some straightforward way. I don't think it's straightforward at all, because we're really talking about hardware versus software. But more than that, we're talking about the software coupling back to the hardware. There's a link between the two. These are not like independent levels. The hardware is developing, the chemicals are doing what chemicals have to do, and then the software is living above that. We know that the software, the information, can affect the hardware. And I'll just give you an example. Genes are not just sitting there. They're either on or off. Switching a gene on or switching a gene off might be a feature of the environment of a system. It may be a very simple thing. Just the mechanical pressure on a cell can affect whether a gene is switched on or off. So somehow the information about the environment, or it may be a messenger molecule. Sound, yes. Or it could be a molecule that's coming from a neighboring cell, which is a signal molecule. It says do this or do that. That information somehow activates a gene, maybe switches it on or off. So there's a downward causation between the informational level and the hardware level. How does that work? How do we formulate the physical theory of all that? So those are the sorts of things that I think we're both fascinated by, and I think these are wide open problems, and I do encourage any young people who are listening to us, maybe here in Yerevan, maybe thinking of a career in science, maybe not quite knowing what area to get into. I would say that this subject, which combines physics and chemistry and mathematics and computing and a good bit of philosophy of science in these complex systems, which are now dominated by nanotechnology and quantum information technology, all of these subjects are coming together with enormous potential for progress. So I would say to any youngsters out there, think about making a career in that area. Think about going to Yerevan State University and signing up to work in this research program. I think there's a thrilling future for you.
Thank you very much, sir. I don't know if we will put it into the program, if we will fit in the time, but I'd like to open a small 5-minute discussion also about what you answered to Dr. Saakian when he asked about why. So moving from origin of life to death, basically, why cancer cell, which is by the result of mutation, why it doesn't die, but continues living and lives in very aggressive manner instead of just dying from the mutation.
Well, I've developed a theory of the origin of cancer based on funded by a research grant from the United States National Cancer Institute, which ran for 5 years. And the theory that I developed, along with some colleagues in the US and Australia, is that cancer is a bit like safe mode on a computer, that if the computer suffers some insult, it defaults back to its core functionality. And now, if you take a cell, one cell of my body, liver cell, brain cell, stomach cell, doesn't matter, the core functionality is the same. It's very ancient. It goes back 3.5 billion years, the fundamental processes of the cell. And so the theory we have is that cancer is like a throwback or a reversion to this earlier life form when all cells were immortal. If you think about a bacterium, it just goes on replicating. It lives forever in ideal circumstances. Whereas multi-celled organisms, which arose about 1 billion years ago on Earth, do it differently. There's a sort of immortality. We call it the germline, that we pass on genes to our children and so on. So some of us
Information space immortality.
Right. But we know that the body dies. The body is there to sort of service the germline. But the cells haven't forgotten. Their inner biochemistry still contains all the machinery for the immortal world before 1 billion years ago. And if something goes wrong, they can switch that back on. And then they become effectively immortal. And then a tumor results. A tumor is a bit like an embryo gone wrong. And when you look at cancer, it's very closely similar to early stage embryogenesis. And a lot of the hallmarks of cancer, the features of cancer, are the same as early stage embryos. But of course, the early stages of an embryo reflect the blueprint for life as it was over 1 billion years ago. And so we can quantify this. This is not just a theory. There's a field study called phylostratigraphy. It's a horrible word, but what it means is you can do for genes what geologists do for rock strata. You can date them, and if you give me your favorite gene, I can look up and tell you, well, that gene is 500 million years old, or it's 2 billion years old, and so on. So we can put the ages there. There's a sort of tree of life, and we go back to the branch points. So if you look across thousands of species, you can construct this tree, and you can look for the same gene across all these different species and find the branch point, and that gives you an age. And we predicted that cancer genes should be older than they should be ancient genes, and that genes which have evolved to suppress tumors, and we have many of them, the body's very good at controlling cancer, they should be more recently evolved, and sure enough, that's the case. And we've also found genes, cancer genes, which have the function that is still exists in bacteria, which is these genes can tune the rate of mutation. So when bacteria are stressed, they can turn up their mutation rate. It's called an SOS response, so they can evolve out of trouble. Well, we have those same genes, and so I think that when the body is stressed, it might be stressed by carcinogens, it might be poor tissue environment, might be hypoxia, low oxygen tension. Cells can say, aha, I remember what to do now. I can turn this little knob here and increase my mutation rate. And so then what you get is cancer. And cancer biologists will tell you, when you look at cancer cells, there's all these mutations. And they say the mutations have caused the cancer. We say the cancer has caused the mutations. It's collateral damage of this SOS response. And that makes a big difference to therapy, because you don't want to throw too much at these cancer cells. You'll only antagonize them and make them turn up the mutation rate even more. So instead of having maximum tolerable dose, we think you should have minimum efficacious dose. So it's a very different approach to therapy. All this stuff is still being investigated. It's not mainstream cancer biology. I'm not a physician. I can't give advice on individual therapy. People always hope I can. I can't do that. But I do think that the standard approach to cancer treatment hasn't changed in several decades. It's chemotherapy, radiation, surgery. We need a little bit now of immunotherapy. We need a new approach. We need to think about cancer in a different way. So I've been involved in trying to change the attitudes of the scientific community to cancer. And it is gaining some traction. I'm very pleased to say that after 10 years or so of putting this set of ideas out there, people are starting to take notice, and there are research projects in various countries that are investigating aspects of this, and we'd like more.
So the cell forgets it. When cell is under some injury or some danger, it forgets its cooperative mode, right, and switches back into the egoistic mode where it's alone, not part of organism, and start remembers its 100 million years of past. Well, switches to another mode.
1,500 million years. This goes back 1.5 billion years. Yes. Yes, it's a reversion to a more primitive type of.
So cancer is basically, we can come up with the definition of cancer for the country scale, when the cells of the country or state, which are families, if they switch from cooperative mode into individual mode and they take only for themselves, they are like cancer in the country, and they can destroy the country from inside.
Yeah, what you're saying is exactly right, and I often make this analogy. That we belong to a community. You join a community and you get advantages and you pay a price. And the price we pay is we have to pay our taxes and obey the laws. But what is to stop people cheating? Well, the answer is we have police, and we have regulatory control, and we have tax inspectors and so on. But we all know that from time to time this can break down. And there are freeloaders who try to gain the benefits of society without paying the contribution. And cancer, I think, is very much like that. These are selfish cells who are making a bid for immortality. They don't know they're going to kill the host organism, of course. They're just cells. But that's effectively their strategy. Because that strategy, life builds on what's already there. And so everything that we have in modern multi-celled organisms has got the framework from those earlier and earlier stages. You build a house. It's not a good idea to start messing around with the foundations. You can change all the embellishments at the top, but you don't change the bottom. And so we're stuck with cells that have got that, in effect, got that ancient memory of how life was working 2 billion years ago.
But the organism, as you said, has learned a very efficient ways of fighting the cancer, and it does it all the time. So maybe political scientists can study that to see what can effectively suppress the cancerous cells in the society.
These analogies are very good, and I've often talked about whether you can have the equivalent of cancer, say, in an ant colony, because ants are cooperative organisms, and can something like that occur there? And there are sort of loose analogies, but I think generally it's an example of complex systems theory. We've been talking about this in various aspects, and complex systems involve a mix of cooperation and competition. And if you have a uniform set of rules, everything works well. But if one or two of the components start operating by different rules, then chaos can result. Yes, I think these ideas can be applied to society as a whole. And I think most people understand intuitively that society works well if everybody is cooperating according to the same set of rules, with a little bit of lassitude for people who want to be individuals, but not so much that they cheat. And cancer is, these are cheating cells.
Thank you very much, sir, for visiting our program, encouraging our students to study complex system theory. no matter whether they want to become biologists or astrophysicists or political scientists, and working with our scientists, collaborating. And I wish you success in the collaboration and all other your initiatives. Զբաղվեք բարդ համակարգերի տեսությամբ. Thank you very much.
Thank you.